Hi, I'm Kathy Hazel Adams. Thank you for joining me today. So today I thought was going to be all about doing what is your true, authentic joy, serving through your joy, that kind of thing. And but in my morning meditation, no, we're going to do something that I don't normally do, and I don't normally like to do. But I was given very strongly. This is what we need to do today, which is talk about some predictions as far as the timeline we're in, what's going on, some things that are going on and maybe coming down the road in terms of the government politics in the U.S. and around the world, the finances around the currency. We're going to talk about some of those things, and importantly, we'll circle back to how to maintain our peace and well-being and stay in the place of creative empowerment in the creator's seat throughout all of this sort of really uproar and chaotic seeming change right now. So before I go on, as always, if you get something out of this video, please remember to click like and subscribe. That tells the YouTube algorithm that this is a good channel to watch. And if you want, check out my Patreon page, Kathy Hazel Adams, Quantum Spirit. You can become a member and join me for a meditation once a month, mid-month meditations. You can join me for the monthly Spirit Talk, which is a live group video call in which we talk about lots of different subjects and answer questions and do some energetic offering work for ourselves and others. They're great. So feel free to check out my Patreon page. So back to the subject at hand. Before I go into these predictions, and I'm going to use my bunny quotes here, I want you all to remember that no predictions are absolute, and that's why they sometimes seem to be wrong, even from people that you would normally give a lot of credibility to. The reason predictions can turn out to be wrong is that there are different timelines available. And what we're really doing at any point in time is reporting on where the energies are right now, where the strongest trajectories are right now for the collective and for the individual. And so there isn't any one set in stone outcome or prediction of timeline, because there is always, always free will and choice. And I talked about that in a couple of other videos about how to decide who to listen to as far as channelers, that kind of thing. I'll leave a link below. But the fact of the matter is that I and others who are really consciously aware of non-physical information, in other words, you can call it intuitive, clairvoyance, clairsentience, adepts, there's all kinds of words for it. But those of us that are really able to sort of consciously be aware of information in the vibrational pattern underneath the physical pattern, we tune into what is the strongest, again, the strongest timeline, the strongest probability. But things change. And that is why, for instance, when people do tarot card readings, perhaps you click on some of those. There's some really good tarot readers online. They cannot say that something is definitely going to happen. They're reading the energies as they are right now for the collective that they are vibrating with, right? Now, as I've said in past videos early on, I don't use tarot cards. I don't use symbol systems. I don't need to. I could. As I'm watching tarot readers, I'm getting my own readings on the cards they're bringing up. But I just go direct. I go direct to the higher self, the inner self, the Akashic records, whatever words you like to use, my inner guidance to access the best, strongest information. And I will also tell you, this is not what I do. I'm not a clairvoyant predictor for the world. This is not normally what I do at all. What I do is help individuals shift their vibrational patterns so that they can become more consciously aware, so they can really become more and more awakened and ascended and create their truest, highest, best possibility of themselves and their lives. That's the main thing I do. So here I am with a predictive YouTube this morning, to my surprise. So I've got a list I sort of jotted for myself to kind of keep myself on track. And here we go. So first of all, Donald Trump. I'm getting that he won't be in the presidency beyond March. Now, again, could that change? You betcha. I and others have been wrong before because timelines changed. Nonetheless, what I'm getting right now is that the energies are that he won't be in the presidency beyond March. I don't know if that's because someone's invoked the 25th Amendment, or that he's resigned, because of all this uproar with the Epstein files and it just becomes too much for him, or if he has some kind of a health problem that causes him to resign or gives him an excuse to resign. But in any case, I'm getting that he won't last past March. Just take that for what it is, as a very strong possibility. I get that J.D. Vance will then be president if that happens, when that happens, and that he'll have a rough time of it because people in the country generally are so unhappy with what's going on with this administration that there's a strong probability that there's going to be sort of a Democratic takeover of the Congress and Senate, which would hobble J.D. Vance's ability to be very effective in the presidency. And again, all of this could change. But right now, the energies that I get are that there really could be a big Democratic flip of the two houses of Congress because the people aren't very happy with what's going on. Prices really are going up. There's more than a good chance that most of us, the majority of us, won't be able to afford health insurance here going forward in 2026. People are being kidnapped and disappeared off the street and brutalized right in front of our eyes. Even people that are American citizens, children are being taken out of apartments with zip ties on their wrists, that kind of thing. Most people in this country, no matter who you voted for, are not very happy. 78% of the entire population likes the Affordable Care Act. They like having those tax credits that help offset their health care costs. And yet a minority of Republicans in charge are trying to take it away. So there really could be a Democratic takeover. We saw a little bit of that, just a couple of weeks ago. So just saying. And so J.D. Vance becomes the president, most likely, probably hobbled by a more of a Democratic leaning Congress and Senate in 2026. And also remember, the country doesn't like J.D. Vance. Most people really don't care for J.D. Vance. So, not the greatest time for him. Now, another twist to the J.D. Vance as president story here is that there are now actual lawsuits going on in a couple of different states to go back and do hand recounts of votes in certain districts because there seem to be really weird anomalies in the numbers that would suggest that the 2024 vote was manipulated. There's more than one group looking into this, but one of the main ones is Election Truth Alliance. And the gentleman who is sort of heads that. It's a nonpartisan organization, but it's a bunch of really statisticians and looking at the data. And they have actually now have a couple of live lawsuits, like I said, in a couple of states and districts in which the actual vote counts are being looked at. They have a channel, Election Truth Alliance. The young man's name is Nathan, and he has his charts and his graphs, and you can visit. They have a website, and you can see really, really obvious, weird anomalies in the data. So there is a strong possibility that within all of that happening, that it will come forth that the 2024 election was not even legitimate. Now, I shared with you all in a video right after Trump was elected that I got energetically visions. I got very strongly that indeed that election had been stolen by the Republicans. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to offend anybody. And it wasn't a wish-want thing. I had a vision, a picture of Elon Musk and Trump. I'll put a link to those videos below. But the point is, in my energetic heart, I know that election was manipulated and stolen. I'm sorry. And I don't know if that's going to come out in public knowledge with receipts that actually changes everything. It might. When I was asking about it, there's definitely a strong probability of it, but there was a sort of I don't know how to explain it, but sort of a fuzziness, a squishiness around it, as in that aspect of the whole deal wasn't as strongly felt to me as maybe some other things that I've shared and I'm going to continue to share here. But it's there as a definite possibility, as in a probability that's looming on the timeline. So getting back to the Affordable Care Act and what's going to happen with that. As you all probably know, there was the government shutdown. The Democrats were holding out because they wanted to have at least the tax credits put back in place for a year. And the Republicans wouldn't go for that. So what the compromise was, the Senate said, okay, what we at least want is a promise that we'll take a vote on this again in December of this year, 2025. When I feel into that, it feels like they're not going to just vote to give back all the tax credits that everybody's been getting for the last few years. There is a pretty good, it doesn't feel that squishy, there's a pretty good chance that as sort of a compromise, because remember, a lot of these Republicans who are voting on this, their people are the ones that are going to suffer without having those tax credits. Marjorie Taylor Greene has been very vocal about that. Her own kids, their health care insurance is going to go through the roof without those tax credits. And there are a lot of Republicans that are going to be on the hot seat with their own constituents if they vote completely against tax credits. So it feels, and I know it sounds like Kathy's brain in there. I can't help what I understand. I understand what's going on. But energetically, I do feel like there's a good chance that they'll at least vote partial tax credits back in. So they're not just completely voting against their own constituents and have to stand in town hall meetings and be screamed at. So getting back to currency and our money and the value of our dollar, you may or may not be aware that the Federal Reserve has been lowering interest rates little by little. And they're getting ready to do something that's called a quantitative easing, where they actually print a bunch more money. And what that does is dissolve the value of our dollars. And so it's general knowledge amongst anybody who follows what's going on with the financial situation in this country that our dollars are buying less and less groceries and less healthcare and everything else. And that the U.S. is running over a $37 trillion deficit. The U.S. is in debt to other countries for over $37 trillion. And so what they've been talking about, and this isn't speculation or conspiracy theory, this is on paper and in recorded conversations, they have been strongly considering revaluing gold. The government has in their sovereign wealth fund at Fort Knox a certain amount of gold. That gold has been valued for years. I think it was last revalued in the 70s. And it's valued at something like, I don't know if it's in the $30 per ounce or the $40 per ounce, but something relatively low. They're talking about revaluing the gold and now saying it's worth $5,000 an ounce. And there's speculation amongst the very educated in the financial community that they could value it at $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 an ounce. They could value it at $10,000, $15,000, or $20,000 an ounce. So that would, on paper, give them a big chunk of new dollars, essentially, that they have to spend and or pay down part of the debt and at least get it back in a ratio that means the country isn't going to crash and burn. Why am I saying this? Because I'm getting that there will be definitely a gold revaluation and that it will happen in 2026, sometime in June, July, or August. Probably, and again, I could be wrong here at any point. It's just what I was getting when I was asking. But sometime summer, June, July, August, that our gold reserves get revalued up. And I get that whether Trump is in as the president or he's out of the picture and Vance is there, that they will do that. Now, a lot of people have been worried about a gold confiscation because evidently, I just learned all of this pretty recently, in the 1930s with the Depression in 1933, what they did is confiscate, make a mandatory demand that everybody turn in any gold that they held privately. They paid them for it, but they paid them the little tiny bit it was worth at that time per ounce. But then they turned right around and revalued it up quite a bit. So people now are worried about mandatory gold confiscations if they're holding any gold in their possession. I'm getting that there's not going to be a mandatory gold confiscation. Again, anything could change. And so down the road, I could very much appear to be wrong because a different version of the timeline came in. But I'm getting that there wouldn't be a mandatory gold confiscation. There could be a request for a voluntary gold surrender. There could be a scenario in which the government says, hey, everybody, anybody who's holding gold, we want to buy it from you, and we'll buy it for whatever, that they wouldn't just steal it. They would buy it for whatever, but then revalue it up. So, but I'm getting that there probably wouldn't be an actual mandatory, you'll go to jail and have fines if you hang on to your old gold. Just saying. That voluntary gold surrender I'm getting, if it happens at all, feels like it would tend to happen more in 2027, not 2026, but that but there would be a gold revaluation in 2026. Now my head says, well, wouldn't that then mean there's another gold revaluation coming? I don't know, and I'm getting no. So I'm not making definite predictions there. I can only give you what I'm given. And I can't pretend that my left brain can work all this out, and I'm not alone in charge of this anyway, obviously. So let's move on to the 3 days of darkness that we've heard so much about, and we're hearing a lot about it, maybe still are in certain circles. I'm getting that, yes, there will be a 3 days of darkness event. When I asked if it would be a blackout event, whether deliberate or not deliberate for the whole planet, I get no, that it'll be more of a naturally caused event. And what I'm getting and feeling and maybe seeing is some sort of seismic event. It could be volcanoes, major volcano eruptions, maybe even combined with rents in the earth, sort of the Earth's crust really shifting. That really creates a lot of, soot and debris and dirt that darkens, maybe turns the sky red, because that's one thing we've heard about with the apocalyptic predictions. The sky turns blood red. Guess what? That happens with seismic eruptions into the sky too. So I'm just saying, I'm kind of seeing maybe a combination of volcanoes and Earth's crust moving to where there really is a lot of sun, sky darkening, debris and soot and dirt and everything else in the atmosphere. When I ask, I'm getting that it won't envelop the entire planet, that it'll be more patchy. Not every person in every area will experience that. And that also, that somehow or another may definitely disrupt the grid, the communications and the power grid. Maybe not for the whole planet, but perhaps for large swaths, at least temporarily. And so that's what I'm getting around the 3 days of darkness. When I ask, when might that be? When does it feel like it's coming? I'm getting sometime between late spring of 2026 and September. So May, June, July, August, September of 2026. I'm getting right now, could be wrong, that there will be some kind of a 3 days of darkness, major Earth event. And then on to the solar flash, which is often talked about sort of in conjunction with the 3 days of darkness. I'm getting that the solar flash takes place after the 3 days of darkness. I don't know how that squares with what some of the higher dimensionals or other dimensionals have predicted. Gosh, in one of my own videos a few months ago, I quoted one of the higher dimensionals and said, this is what they're saying. And if I remember correctly, that one did say that this event will take place by mid-year, summer of 2026. It will have happened. So, I mean, that tracks with what I'm getting. But I honestly don't remember if they said which comes first or second. When I asked directly, I'm getting that, no, they don't come exactly together. That there is the 3 days of darkness event, whatever that looks like where you are, and in your world. And then after that, at some point, there is the solar flash. And I get specifically that the solar flash will come sometime between July and the end of the year, December 31st. So, quite a long window there for the solar flash event that I'm getting. And I want to stop and remind you here that these are all stories and timelines, and that all the probable possible timelines are still available. Yes, we are now consolidating as a collective into the ones that we intend and want to experience and are sort of voting for, signing up for. So yes, timelines are interweaving and collapsing. That's what's going on right now. We are solidifying our way forward as a collective. But that always, you are first and foremost an expression of source consciousness, God consciousness, and you have free will and choice, and you are the creator of your own reality. And so you aren't at the mercy of or bound by any of these stories. You exist outside of those stories. You hold the stories. They don't hold you. So don't for 1 minute feel like you're going to be at the mercy of what goes on, whether it's exactly what I'm seeing or not. And again, at the end of the video, we'll talk about that a little bit more so that you can be, kind of the dog that wags the tail and not the tail wagging the dog. Let's remember who we really are. Moving on to a couple of more international things I thought to ask about. I'm getting that Putin will not survive 2026. And when I say will not survive, I'm getting that that's not just political, that he will not survive. Whether he becomes ill and passes away, or someone within his own country or another country helps him not survive, I don't know, but that he will not survive 2026, and that with him gone, Russia will not continue to prosecute that war against Ukraine. As far as Gaza, Netanyahu, that whole deal, I am getting that Netanyahu will not survive 2026, and that he will be forcibly removed by lethal means. I don't want to use the words and flag things in YouTube. He will be forcibly removed by lethal means, and that could come from, I'm not saying this definitely, but it feels like a strong possibility, probability, it could come from within his own country. Because remember, he is an authoritarian dictator type. He ran over the top of the people and their wishes and made it so that that his Senate, or whatever their government structure is, that they would all do his bidding, and that he could basically do anything he wants. And he's the one that openly wants to take over Gaza. And kind of a similar personality, Trump. And just like Trump, he has all kinds of corruption and now war crime charges pending against him. So he has to stay in power and sort of take over and be the authoritarian, or he'd be going down, and he knows it. So anyway, I get that he's not surviving 2026. When I ask, I get that then the US and Israel will not be taking over Gaza, that there probably will be more of a two-state solution. First of all, you can see that the whole March through September of next year is just this ball of activity. I mean, crazy activity and change. I didn't go into any of the astrology here because honestly, I stopped following it. There are so many reflections in the heavens of just incredible chaotic change that I'm not an astrologer. I can't keep all of that in my head and do what I do, very honestly. So I would like to hear from you all, first of all, about how you feel about all of this, but also many of you have been following or are astrologers, and you may know, the placement of the planets and the aspects and the trines and the squares and how those appear against Trump's chart or the chart of the United States, that kind of thing. So please, if you can leave your insights in the comments about how the energies going on as reflected in the heavens match up or don't with what I've laid out here with this probable timeline of probable events, I really would love to hear from you, and so would other viewers. So finally, let's circle back to, okay, everything's up in the air as far as the finances, the country, your finances, your health insurance, money you do or don't have in the bank, and what's going to happen to that, and what's it going to be worth. They're crazy times, and I think they're going to look crazier and crazier every time we turn on the news and the YouTube. I want to remind you all, again, you are source consciousness, you are God consciousness, showing up as Joseph, Mary, Madeline, whatever your name is, your source consciousness showing up as this unique perspective and personality in this environment you chose to, and you are creating your individual experience, and you are, with your vibration, of what you're buying and accepting as true, you are creating the actual world experience, the country's experience, the timeline we're on. And so what is much more important than all these stories of how exactly do things happen and how will this go and how will we do that? We don't have to worry about that. I talked about this in the last video I just did. And sometimes I call it getting a bigger umbrella. You don't worry about all the little details and how things are going to play out and trying to micro control and plan. No, you go to what's my overarching desire and intention. My intention. What do I accept for myself? What do I give to myself? What do I accept for the world and the country? What do I give myself and the world and the country? And you move into vibration of what you do desire for the world and the country, I hope. Peace, love, support amongst all people, harmony, everybody being on board with what's good for everybody, and you having at all times what you need. Amidst all of this, you get an inspiration to do something with your savings account. Amidst all of this, you feel an impulse to physically move somewhere else in the country, or you feel an impulse to find out a little bit more about this or this. You follow your impulses and your inspirations because they are always leading you directly to your true intention for yourself. And again, that overarching vibration of what you intend as far as your well-being and the well-being of the country and the planet, the universe rushes in to fulfill that intention. And as I said in the last video, and that's a committed intention. Sit quietly, find where you feel yourself in the God source consciousness creator's seat, as expressed as Joe or Mary or Stephanie. Feel yourself in the creator seat. These stories and these chaotic activities do not hold me. I hold them. I have choice. This is what I intend for myself. And by the way, yes, let's do this. Feel yourself committing to the intention to give yourself an experience of having what you need, not only getting through this, but creating and adding to it in a positive way, because you know that where you are also helps create what the collective experience is in the country and in the world. So that's what I wanted to share today. I hope something I said helped you in some way. I want to hear your thoughts and comments and what you can add, especially around that astrology. If you know something, please share in the comments. And again, I'll remind you to please feel free to check out my Patreon page. Memberships start as low as $2. There's a lot there, and we really are starting to create a community of the awake and awakening, a community of people that are of like understanding and vibration. So I hope you'll join us. See you next time.